Alright guys, it's time. I've waited long enough. I've been kind of putting off doing this video for a while. Uh, I guess some background. I have been a World of Warcraft player technically since the game released in America. Um, I can't even, 15, 16 years ago, something like that. I forget how long exactly it's been now. But I played when the game came out, only for a little bit. Gotta remember this is back in the times when I was of the age I didn't even own my own computer. It was my dad's computer. Internet was dial up, right? It's still crazy to me to think that some people don't even know what that means. But someone could take a phone call, you'd be logged off, etc. Crazy times. So I don't consider myself necessarily technically a veteran though, because I take a lot of breaks from this game. Um, I really haven't played any expansion all the way through consistently, besides maybe two or three of them. And there's been quite a few. But I've been an MMO player for my whole life. World of Warcraft was my first, and I've always wanted it to be great. Some years, some eras, it delivered on that, and sometimes, in my opinion, more often than not, it didn't. So I've played a lot of games, guys. Guild Wars 2 was kind of my biggest one that I played most consistently, and probably still would consider that to be my main game. But World of Warcraft's new expansion, Midnight, is releasing at the end of this month, February 2026. The changes that Blizzard has been doing have been really, really cool and have brought a player like myself back into the game, brought my excitement back. And that's regardless of my friends playing or anything like that. The game itself is giving me a reason to come back. And so what I want to do with this video is kind of touch on that, give new players or veteran players or returning players a reason to play this next expansion and really dive into it and talk about it. This isn't going to go super in depth into every system, but I'm going to kind of do a broad coverage of the game as a whole, including the new features that are coming in Midnight, and give kind of a perspective of somebody who is an MMO player, why you may want to play this game now if you didn't, or come back to it, etc. So, first things first, what I'll say, and this is why I'm here in the new housing zone, which is pretty sweet. Housing is finally in World of Warcraft. I don't know why it took them this long. The biggest MMO ever, right? Technically, people say. And the last to get housing. What the hell, right? But what I will say is the system is quite good. It's relatively polished. It's got some pretty significant depth to it, and it's very fun. I give it high marks personally. Okay, I've played a lot of other MMOs, like I said. ESO has really cool housing as well. Elder Scrolls Online. I would say comparatively, there's a lot more you can do in World of Warcraft's housing, but it's maybe at a smaller scale than Elder Scrolls. Whereas in Elder Scrolls, you can buy these massive, structures to live in. Whereas here, the structures are smaller, but the customization is higher. Final Fantasy has really in-depth housing as well, so that's another one. Guild Wars 2 finally had housing in the last couple of years. Pretty decent housing, not amazing, but pretty good, and high on the RP scale. But World of Warcraft is very good, guys. I gotta say, not only is the housing itself, internally and externally, the customization is quite good, but also the neighborhood structure that they kind of went with, I also really like. There are biomes within this. I'm just going to fly around and kind of showcase this to you guys. This is the Alliance side of things. There's Horde and Alliance in the World of Warcraft world. This is the Alliance. I think a lot of people would say that the Alliance did kind of get the better side of things when it comes to the zones and the design of the zones. But both are good, and it's quite big. You can see my arrow here flying around. The island is quite large. There are a lot of plots to pick from, a lot of different views you can have. I do think that the scenery is quite good. I like the world building. I like pretty much everything that they decided to go for here with the player housing neighborhood island. You've got like this cool dark, spooky vibe going on with mushrooms and cobwebs and graveyards and, just darker things. Not like fully grim, but definitely on the darker side, darker tones, right? And then you got this kind of like lighter, um, sort of mystical, foresty area. And you've got the kind of traditional spring to like autumn green. I would just say traditional. This is kind of like what World of Warcraft felt like with the town center and everything. My little neighborhood group has done some upgrades here and gotten some achievements for our neighborhood. But it's really well done, guys. I think that housing is a W from World of Warcraft. This is a really, really cool feature. And honestly, just completely, transparent, I think just housing alone is enough of a reason if you're a returning player to come back at least for a little bit and check it out and see if it's enough of a difference for you. For me, it almost is just housing on its own. Like this cool little like vineyard you can have. If you're like this property, this is like a housing property. You right across from the vineyard, pretty sweet. I think there's another one that's pretty close. Yeah, up here, there's another one that's pretty close to the vineyard. But vineyard, farmland, zone going on here. Back to the spot where I started, which is where my house is at. This like kind of beach area. There's a really nice plot down here that links up to this chunk of land with some like mountainous area and a cool little access to the water. Look at those clouds, guys. They did a really good job, okay? The art team, fabulous, fantastic. Definitely got to give them props for that. I hit the ceiling. This is my plot. I'm going to kind of briefly showcase to you guys what it's like when you kind of get access to this and you're going to start customizing. You hit the edit house. And everything you see within this glowing outline here is customizable property. Where you place items, you have a large list of items. There's various ways to get these. You can purchase them from vendors. You can get them as achievements or drops. Lots of different ways to get the items, guys. And I'm not going to go into like all the items. Like I said, this isn't going to be super in depth in each system. Just an overview. So everything you see within that square rectangle area was placed by me. Lots of customization, lots of options. Really good, honestly. Very, very cool. From the boulders to the shrubbery to, the vines, right? All the different trees, flowers, etc. You come in here. I really like the art, too, of, like, the loading screens. Everything you see here was placed by me. There's a lot of different wall and floor and ceiling options you guys can pick from. As you can see, different floor here from the last room, different ceiling from the last room, etc. So many different tables and chandeliers and placeable objects, food even. Very, very, very high customization. Really cool thing as well, if I just like place something here. So you can like freely rotate things. Lots of different menus here. You can, angles, all sorts of stuff, which allows people to be very creative. To be honest, even though I really like my house, it's not particularly complicated or creative to do what I've done. I pretty much just took items that I like the look of, placed them in sort of like, feng shui or, just properly placed locations. I didn't really do anything crazy with like, creative angled objects together to make something else. I didn't do anything like that. What's the remove button? R, yeah. So, but you can either go the route that I've gone, or there are some extremely creative houses. You guys can even look up online. There's like lists of player houses that they've done. Very, very cool, very unique stuff. This is pretty basic, honestly, even though I like it a lot. Portraits, bathroom, bed, all the stuff, guys. Okay, so this is housing. A lot of things are interactable, like seating is interactable, lighting is interactable. I don't think these ones specifically are, but there's lots of like interactable lamps and things like that. I think my chandelier here is interactable. Yeah, you can turn it off. So it's done pretty dang good. I'd give it like an 8.5 or a 9 out of 10. This is very, very good, guys, and I'm very happy with it. I think Blizzard did a great job with housing. So that's housing in a nutshell. One other thing that I'll kind of touch on in terms of just like the neighborhood system in general, not the houses themselves, but the neighborhoods, is this like level. So you increase your housing level, which allows you to get like bigger housing and more decoration limit and things like that. But there's also this thing called endeavors, which is like a community or neighborhood activity center kind of deal, where you do various things on like a cycle basis. All these challenges will change, and the more you complete, the higher your bar goes, and the higher your bar goes, the vendors in town will offer different purchasable items and things like that. And the events are extremely diverse. There's things from like activities within the neighborhood itself, like jumping puzzles, treasure hunts, things like that, to events out in the world of World of Warcraft, right? Like the outside zones, which is very very cool. The reason why that's super significant, guys, especially for this game, compared to like other MMOs, is World of Warcraft has notoriously had a very bad, or done a very bad job of like engaging players with old content. There really wasn't a whole lot of reason to go like, back to Warlords of Draenor if, you're a current retail WoW player playing in Dragonflight or War Within, right? Warlords of Draenor, cool expansion. Some people are going to think that that's a troll. I actually liked Warlords of Draenor, but anyways, I digress. Any of the old expansions, Wrath of the Lich King, Warlords, Cataclysm, any of them, right? MOP. There really wasn't a whole lot of reason to go back unless you were like hunting one specific achievement that you never got and you're just a completionist and you want that achievement. Sure. But now with the Endeavor system, they give you reasons, they do events in some of those old expansions to go and earn progress for your housing system. So that's really cool. It's going to be significant, and it's going to give a lot more, I think, player retention. I think that'll be kind of like that's like going to be my buzzword, my buzz phrase for this expansion and this video in general is player retention, which is what you want as any game designer, right? Any studio, you want player retention. So that's housing. I'm kind of going to stop there. There's a lot more to it. There's more in depth I could go, but we're going to stop there so this video isn't 3 hours long. Next thing on my list I was going to talk about was the prey system. I do not have a way to show this in-game because it does not yet exist. But what the concept is, and it's very cool, is as you're out doing leveling in the open world, I believe you can opt into this. I would think it's crazy if they made it like an automatic thing or you can't opt into it, but I believe you opt into the prey system, and like these kind of boss monsters will randomly spawn and you can fight them for rewards, etc. Very, very cool, something we've never had in World of Warcraft. There have been things similar to that in other games, like an assassin coming to get you randomly, like in Guild Wars 2. There's been things like that in other MMOs, but I'm really happy that World of Warcraft is, stealing, so to speak, or whatever you want to say, but just incorporating, right? That's what it really is. At the end of the day, a lot of these big games, they steal from each other, right? And it's a good thing when a game takes a good idea from a different game and incorporates it into their own game, maybe adds a cool twist to it. I'm down for that. So the prey system sounds very intriguing. I'm super excited for that, personally. And I think that it's going to be something to look forward to, again, for like more to kind of do in the open world as opposed to just like gathering materials and, role-playing in Goldshire, etc. Yeah, that covers prey. This is not a new system that I'm going to touch on next. This system came out in the War Within, but it is related to, or I guess the system I'm talking about is related to this system, Delves. Delves are cool. They're like little mini dungeons, although I really wasn't blown away by the way that they were implemented. The hype was there when the expansion first came out, and then it kind of faded pretty fast for me. Delves are okay, something to do, but the design of them for me was pretty repetitive, and I wasn't very excited about them after like maybe a month of playing. Sorry to whoever designed the Delve system. I like the concept, but just a little bit stale in my opinion. Here's a Delve. You go in, you select your difficulty. It's a little mini dungeon. You can do solo with a NPC partner. What they're doing now is they're adding something called labyrinths, in the Midnight launch, which is like a series of delves, they kind of said, together. So it's like a big mega delve, right? And you kind of go through them. They've said that you can like save halfway through, you can come back and complete them later, you can do it in chunks, things like that. So yet another thing along with Prey that's being added into just the open world experience, which I'm very excited for. Again, it could be a total flop, guys. All this could be a flop, except housing. Housing's dope. We've proven that. But you never know if it's going to be good or bad. But again, the fact that they're doing it and it's a lot of added effort and added content that they haven't done before. W for me. 2 thumbs up to Blizzard for that one. Besides that kind of new stuff, World of Warcraft, for anybody who hasn't played it before, again, this is kind of World of Warcraft's bread and butter, is dungeons and raids. Dungeons and raids have always been World of Warcraft's thing. It's kind of what they've leaned most of their development dollars into, in my opinion, is the raids and dungeons. And everyone, not everyone, I shouldn't say everyone, but a lot of people who play MMOs would agree that the dungeon and raid experience in World of Warcraft is actually pretty good. The system called Mythic Plus, which is like the scaling difficulty dungeons we have right now, people don't like that sometimes. There's a lot of people who, it's a mixed bag of whether they think it's a good system or a bad system. But in general, dungeons and raids in World of Warcraft people like. They are committed to continuing that, it seems like, and making them, still a focus or the main focus of the game. But what they're going to do that they released in a video they released on their main homepage recently is they're going to do more like single raid monsters, which is pretty cool, like single bosses where you don't do a whole long raid, you do one boss of a raid, which they've done that before, but they haven't done it really recently. So again, they're kind of I feel like it's refreshing their sort of goal and reintroducing more things, more variety into the game, so it doesn't feel quite so stale. Because that was a really big gripe that I had with World of Warcraft, was how stale it felt over time. The beginning of every expansion is usually pretty good, but I have more confidence than normal that this will be more. There'll be more longevity to this expansion in terms of player retention than there was before, because of the systems that they've been talking about implementing, and we've seen some of them already, and they've had some success. So that's quick touch on dungeons and raids, guys. For me, I feel like the raiding experience in World of Warcraft compared to other MMOs, Guild Wars 2, Elder Scrolls Online, etc., is pretty harsh, because you really have to dedicate a lot of time to experience that like higher level of content. So it kind of gatekeeps a lot of people. I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. I'm not trying to say like, oh, make everything easy so that every player can always do it all the time. I'm not necessarily saying that, but I will say that Elder Scrolls Online and Guild Wars 2 both are more accessible when it comes to that high-end content, especially the higher end, because of how the gearing works in those games and time spent to get that gear. So I gotta see in Midnight how different that is, and I'm not really necessarily trying to say that they should change anything, because there should be content for all people and all players. For any new player who is coming to World of Warcraft and they're intimidated by that kind of thing, my advice would be to simply not worry about it, which sounds maybe like a cop-out answer, but especially mythic raiding in this game is not supposed to be for every player, and it doesn't have to be. There's no reason why a casual everyday World of Warcraft player has to do mythic raid. You just simply do not have to do that, right? Normal raid, heroic raid are both relatively simple to, join, learn, gear up for, and complete. Especially normal. Normal was pretty easy usually. Every single expansion, normal is, you can do it with a bunch of random people. It's not like you have to have a guild or anything like that. And it, all the story information and, big event completion feeling is going to be accomplished and achieved through like the normal mode of the raid. So there's no reason to have to do mythic or even heroic if you don't want to. But I would urge people who are getting into the game or want to try the game to keep it in their back pocket and think about, at least heroic rating in this game and just kind of experiencing that if you can. But that does kind of segue me into my next topic, which is something that World of Warcraft has always done really, really, really good. And I can't knock the game for what I'm about to say. The world building, the role play, the character building, the class design has always been top tier in World of Warcraft. The that's not what I wanted to do. The customization, the amount of spells, the amount of specializations, you can even specialize within your specialization now with the introduction of hero talents, which for anybody who's new to this and this looks super confusing, it's not, okay? Don't let it scare you. These are relatively easy to understand talent trees. There's lots of guides online you can follow if you want to. And it looks like a lot when you first glancing at something like this, but once you kind of play the game and understand what your spells are and what you're reading and what it means, it all falls into place. I promise you guys. I think that the depth World of Warcraft class building and character design has always had is top tier for MMOs. Very, very good. It's what keeps, I think, a lot of players playing the game, to be honest, is character, class design, and gameplay. I've always liked it. I think it's a W from Blizzard pretty much from the start. And the talents, I don't remember exactly when they did this, if it was Shadowlands or when it was. Maybe Dragonflight when they did this talent overhaul. But it's been good for a long time. This is one of Blizzard's kind of consistent W's. And I would say that if this is something that's keeping you from the game or trying the game, don't let it, okay? We've got so many different classes to choose from, so many races to choose from, lots of identity you can glean from pretty much a ton of different avenues in this game. Transmog is where I'll go next, guys. Transmog has gotten overhauled in Midnight. Another thing that specifically they did for Midnight that has, along with housing, that's extremely different from how it's been before. So, brand new system in housing, never seen it before. The transmog system is also basically brand new. It's the same generic concept of changing, one of your pieces of gear to look like something else, but how you do it now is different. So, you've got this menu, right? Brings up all of your different unlocked outfit styles or looks for each armor slot, right? So I click the hood, here's all my hoods that I've unlocked, right? I click the shoulders, here's all the shoulders that I've unlocked, right? And you can individually do each shoulder if you want to even. So cool little button for that. It used to be that you would select one of these slots, you would pay gold to change that piece into a different look, and then if you got a new piece of gear that you wanted to wear that was better, you then had to pay again to, redo that process. The way that they've changed it for Midnight is you now have these outfits, and the outfits permanently change the way your character looks, no matter if you get a new piece of gear or not. It is more expensive up front, but you end up, they say, I gotta do the math myself because I'm not really sure what to think, but they say it saves you money in the long term. I'd have to kind of analyze, which kind of transmogging and how often and when it really becomes worth it or not worth it, whatever. I do like the system. I think this is better. It's really annoying when you get a cool piece of gear or or maybe you unlock a new look for a hood or something or a cloak, and you really like it and you want to put it on your cloak, but your cloak's kind of crappy, and then you do a raid with your friends and the best in slot cloak drops, and you're like, oh well, I gotta wear that. That's the best in slot cloak, right? But it doesn't look like that cool cloak that you got last week, and you got to pay again to reskin it, which is whatever. But now it's just a little kind of flavor RP thing, really, is what it comes down to. You walk into the raid with your completed outfit, you get a new piece of gear, the best in slot cloak drops, you put it on, doesn't change the way you look because this version of transmogging is permanent, right? Doesn't matter if I replace one of my pieces of gear, I'm wearing this look permanently, right? And I can change between them as I want. You can purchase additional slots, etc. But I can change between the looks if I want to, and they're just always going to be there. I think that's a big W for me. I think it's way better this way. Personally, people will argue and they'll say, no, it's better the way before. But I feel like, sometimes people don't like change just because it's different. I think this is a good change, so another W from Blizzard. So kind of like a little recap. Housing, we already know it's good. Housing's a W. The new transmog system, personally, I believe is also a W. Kudos to Blizzard on that one. We've got to kind of see how the delves and labyrinths work in the upcoming Midnight expansion, but we'll at least know that they'll be decent, because the delves now are decent, so the future delves will also be decent, and they might even be better, right? And then the Prey, which I'm very excited for. Prey, I hope is going to be sick. It sounds sick. It sounds like something that is an obvious win, just conceptually, right? If you opt into it, you want to be fighting these bosses in the open world while you're questing. That sounds cool with your friends, whatever. I don't know. Potential W for sure there. The fact that they're doing the single raid boss raid encounters is also probably going to be great. It was great before. I don't really know why they got away from it. Maybe just, development hours or whatever. Really not sure. Or story building. I don't know. But single boss raid encounters are pretty much just a universal W as well. So that's a win. What have I not really touched on yet that I wanted to? Yes. So kind of segueing from the transmog stuff and class design and things like that. If you're a new player, you won't even know that this happened, this next topic we're going to discuss, okay? But the veteran players, the people who played last expansion, there's been a lot of controversy going on about class design and simplification, which Blizzard did a ton of for Midnight. Between War Within and Midnight, the changes are quite drastic for some classes. Things were very complicated, one could say before, but more nuanced maybe if you want to look at it that way, and they're simpler and less nuanced now. But I'm going to fight for the side of simplicity here on this one. I really, 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 really believe that it's better for a game to be simpler to play with harder encounters than it is for a game to be harder to play with simpler encounters. And what I mean by that is the way that things have been before in World of Warcraft, some of the characters are like, you have to have, this is an exaggeration, but they say this, you have to have like a, physics degree to play some of the classes, the class designs before. Like the amount of different buttons and actions per minute you have to pay attention to, buffs you have to pay attention to, keys to press, etc., while also moving and dodging abilities and things like that. It's honestly, it's daunting. It can be a headache. It can be physically taxing on your hands. Which sounds like I'm joking, but I'm not. I actually have a friend just a couple weeks ago who was describing his experience with Rogue specifically, and how it began to hurt his hands to play at the level of play he was at. Now he was a very high level player, and not everyone has to play at that level, right? But that is a real thing, guys. Like classes can be over designed. It's just a thing, okay? I don't, people can be pissed off that I said that. Like, get better, or skill gap, or whatever. Shut up, all right? Less is sometimes more, all right? And this is one of those times I think they're going in the right direction. Did they overdo it? Maybe, all right? Maybe. We'll have to see. For me personally, I like my classes that I've been playing. I've liked their changes. Personally, I've settled on Priest. I like the Priest changes, although not all of them, but as in general, I do like them. So I think that the majority of the classes have been well done. There are some misses for sure. There are some L's, but there are also a lot of W's, guys, and we got to give Blizzard credit where credit is due, all right? And again, as I said before, I'm going to fight for the side of simplicity because I think simplicity of gameplay, less buttons but more impactful rotations with potentially more interesting, dungeon and boss encounters is a way better direction. All right, it promotes new players at a greater extent as well. New players don't want to play extremely, intensive things when they're trying to learn. It's way more daunting. It's way more taxing. It's way more mentally draining. It's way more. You feel worse about yourself when you do bad. Yes, there's that ceiling where it's like you feel really good when you master something that's really hard to do. I get that, but I just really feel strongly that this direction that Blizzard is taking is better for the health of the game as a whole, and for those reasons that I previously mentioned. So that kind of covers like the Midnight class design discussion. Again, I'm not going to like pull up specific classes and talk about their changes individually, but in general, that covers that. What I do kind of want to talk about next is what I really feel like most players will be doing when you're like a long-term player of the game. Well, I guess there's like, I'll kind of touch on like multiple ways to play this game, all right? If you're a new player to World of Warcraft, you're considering playing it, you're considering coming to Midnight, you've seen some ads, you've heard people say that it's good, etc., etc. There's a few different types of players in this game, okay? You can be a raid log Andy. What that means is you basically get on a couple times a week or a few times a week with your guild, right? And you do the raid, and then you basically log off, and you don't touch the game again until next week. And that's fine. So having the raids be interesting and complicated and having the classes play well, that really suits those players, right? So we're going to hope that that's a thing that's going to be in Midnight, and it very well might be. But I think a lot of people fall into the more like people who want to be inside of a world, right? They use games like this, big, massively multiplayer online games, as an interactive world to experience and spend like the majority of their free time in, right? I would consider that to be the majority of players in other MMOs especially. World of Warcraft has kind of become a little bit more of like a log-on, log-off experience because there hasn't been all that much to do in the open world. But as I touched on before, because of all these additions that they're doing in Midnight, I really feel like it's going to shift. I think that the players who are playing things like Final Fantasy for like the club nights, and Elder Scrolls for the role-play events, and Guild Wars 2 for the open world meta farming and basically mob smashing gameplay loop where you just go around just like fighting mobs over and over again, and it's just kind of fun to play your class. I think some of that's going to bleed in. I think that's going to be more there's going to be a little bit more of a taste of that in Midnight with the Prey and the Labyrinths and things like that. So I do want to say I'm hopeful, and I think that players who are those kind of like role play world enjoyers, this is going to be potentially the expansion for you. That's what I'm holding out for, because that's kind of the player that I am, and that's part of why I'm coming back to Midnight World of Warcraft. It's because I'm a little bit of a believer. Maybe I'm huffing copium, but I'm a believer right now that is going to be an experience for me. Also, I kind of forgot this, but like the housing experience is part of that as well. The endeavors with your neighborhood, with your friends or your guild, if you guys have a guild neighborhood, whatever it is, you'll be doing the endeavors together. You'll be doing the Prey together, potentially Labyrinths together. There's going to be more to do just on a daily world experience level than there ever has been before. I'm not sure if I should say that, but that it feels like there has been before, at least for a long time, right? Maybe garrisons, I don't know, something I'm missing from years past, but it really feels like they're trying to bring that sort of world alive again. So that's what I'm holding out for. I guess the last thing that I want to touch on is something that World of Warcraft has had for a long time that I feel like a lot of players don't really take advantage of, and it's sad because it doesn't exist in very many games, and that's world PvP. The PvP in general in World of Warcraft is pretty decent. I haven't really been a part of it for a very long time, but I know some people who have been, and they've always sort of liked it. It's gone up and down though. To be honest, there's been troughs and valleys for sure, the good and the bad. But I feel like with the simplification of classes and the uh, kind of new design pathway that they've taken, PvP is looking up for me. I'm not saying that other PvPers or veteran PvPers are going to be happy with the new changes, but for somebody like me and newer players or worse players, having simpler classes and less to learn and think about, I think is going to be positive for PvP from that perspective. Does that mean it's better that way or worse that way? Not necessarily. It's more of like a personal preference, right? But I'm excited for it, and I want new players to be also excited for it. Even if PvP has not been your thing before, I think now could be kind of the time to get your feet wet. And what I was saying before about world PvP, I have always missed being able to go into a world, right, where my quests are up and there's things to fight in the open world, but there's also the threat of other players. I love that. And the cool thing about World of Warcraft is War mode, World PvP mode, is a toggleable, selectable setting, right? You can turn it on, you can turn it off. Done. If you don't want to do it, you don't want people to attack you, turn it off. If you want to fight and add another layer of experience to your open world questing, leveling, or just, later on in the expansion, just to fight people in the open world, turn it on. Another feature that you'll have. So I think if more people would use war mode, it would also add to the open world experience and world building of the game as well. I plan on playing in war mode. This is going to be like the first, maybe second time I've ever really done this. But for my leveling experience, for the majority of Midnight, I will probably have war mode on this time, which feels cool. It feels new for me. I'm excited. I just think it's going to add depth, and it's something that a lot of other games don't have. Guild Wars 2 has like a dedicated mode for this open world PvP type thing, but it's in a dedicated map. It's not in the general leveling and questing zones, partially because it just wouldn't really work in that game with the way the game's structured. But not very many games have this, guys. Like, this is a unique kind of thing to World of Warcraft, I feel like, and it should be taken advantage of. It should be experienced. It's part of the game. It's been there for forever. We should use it and have fun. And if you stop having fun and you're getting bullied and you suck and you hate yourself, turn it off. Enough said. Easy, right? It's kind of like people say, like, oh, I'm getting bullied on the internet. Don't read the comments or whatever. It's obviously that's kind of a troll answer, but this is similar, right? Fun mode on, fun mode off, or vice versa, depending on your personality. But that's the last thing I kind of wanted to touch on about the game, just kind of features of the game. So I'm gonna go over just a little bit of like menus and things, because the last thing that they really changed, this is not a like gameplay thing at all, which is why I left it for the end, is the UI and menus have all been changed. I think for the better, for sure. So there's been this big controversy around add-ons, which is something in the menus here. You can, notoriously World of Warcraft has been plagued with like almost like add-on bloat. It's like you felt like you need add-ons for everything. Like the game's not even a full game unless you have add-ons, right? Which for somebody like me who just adds another layer of kind of unneeded complexity, I've been hating it for years. And the fact that Blizzard has now decided to basically kill off the majority of add-ons, for me, is a giant W. I know that's controversial to the community sometimes. People think that that's a dumb take, bad take. I don't care. I think that it's the right decision, and Blizzard is doing the right thing, cracking down on add-ons, especially combat add-ons. For anybody who's new to World of Warcraft, because I know a lot of other games do have add-on compatibility, but definitely not to the extent that World of Warcraft does. World of Warcraft basically has so many add-ons, it's not even funny. If I opened up my CurseForge, which is an app to download add-ons, and you could like scroll through all of the add-ons that have been made for World of Warcraft, it's like an endless list. There's been, you always had to have this damage meter details. There's so many other features that were like almost felt necessary to have to play the game optimally. And what they've done now is they have removed the capability of those add-ons to function, but they have added a lot of those functions into the base game, which is very, very cool. So I'm going to touch on that really quick here, guys. They've added their own damage meter. They've added their own like buff and debuff cooldown tracking ability. You can fully edit this. Advanced cooldown settings. You can edit this. You can select what cooldowns you want alerts for or to see as they pop up. There's like these bars. I can show you. It can show me how long. Right here, my power infusion is lasting for. Pretty cool. If I press power infusion, it comes up and it shows me with the timer and the bar how long it's up. That was not a thing in the old UI version. You had to have an add-on for that, right? Whereas now it's just in the game. The veterans will say that the Blizzard version of all these things is garbage or worse. They'll say that. I've heard that before. I think that's a bad take. I mean, they may be right that it's not as good as the independent add-ons, but the fact that it exists at all is a win. Okay, guys? Let's just be honest with that. And what that also does is, again, from a new player or casual player perspective, it's way, way, way better to have these features already in the game. They don't require, updates and downloads and file placement and tracking of your, various different kinds of features and add-ons and different creators and wondering if they put some bullshit in the files or whatever. I don't know. Maybe that's kind of like a conspiracy take, but it's just better. It's cleaner. It's easier. It's streamlined. And I'm going to fight anybody who says that the tracked bars and buff tracker, etc. is bad. I disagree. I think that it's actually quite good. I do. I think it's pretty good. It's about as much as I ever did with like weak auras or the other add-ons that do those kinds of things. Because I wasn't a huge, complicated bloat screen type of guy. I liked more simplicity in my UI. So I think what Blizzard did with this is actually quite good. They've got the boss timeline counter here showing you boss abilities on the side. All this is movable. The grid size can be changed. It's snappable to grid. It's snappable to other components. You can line things up perfectly. You can micro adjust them. There's so much customization, but within the system itself, which is it's just better, guys. I don't care. Argue with me all you want in the comments, but I think that this is strictly better for World of Warcraft. Hands down. Almost no argument to say otherwise, to be completely honest. Is it perfect? No. Have they forgotten some key features that some individual playstyles or classes or like tank, healer, DPS, have they forgotten some things? Have they left out some things? Yes. So no, it's not perfect, but is it really good? I think it is. I think it's good enough, specifically. And it's just better to have things this way than to have a bunch of add-ons. So fight me in the comments if you want to, but I think it's a massive W. And I think that so there's going to be guides people are going to be making about this. So I'm not going to make a guide on like how to organize all this stuff and what to do. I mean, maybe I'll do one in the future for like my specific setup. But for now, I think that I'm going to leave it there and just kind of showcase to the new players that this all exists. And it's basically for you guys. It's for the new player. It's for the casual player. It's for the veteran player who's sick of add-ons, though, too, guys. Okay, let's be honest. It's for you also. It's for all of those people. The only person that this isn't for is, like, the hard-headed add-on Andy who's been using, a billion times, or like, the most complicated LVUI setup that anyone's ever seen in their life, and they're losing their functionality and their customization of those specific things. Yes, their experience is now changed for probably the worse. But that's just got to be such a small portion of the population, and it doesn't. And even if it's not, it inarguably is worse for new players and player retention to have the game be that older way. The newer way is better. All right. So that covers that. That's pretty much all I wanted to touch on, guys. This is just kind of like a rant, I guess, about the changes and why, if you're a new player, you should try the game out for Midnight. Um, I'm excited. A lot of my friends are excited. If it's a flop, it's a flop, and we quit, and that's that. But I think that there's enough to be excited about here, guys, that, whether it's a hype train or not, I think try it out. I think that's the general sentiment. I think try it out. I'm going to do my part to provide more content as Midnight goes along. Kind of change my channel from what it was to what it's going to be now, which is more focused on World of Warcraft for a little bit, especially through like the first few months of the Midnight expansion, and really diving into what they're able to give us. So check me out on my future videos, guys. If you like this video, I know it was a bit of a long-winded one, but again, we're gonna be making more World of Warcraft content upcoming, and I hope to see you guys there. Peace.